ম্যাম জাস্ট হ্যাঁ ম্যাম আমরা শুরু করব। তার আগে একটু যারা স্টুডেন্ট রয়েছে তাদেরকে বলি, আজকে তোমরা জানো তোমাদের যেটা আমরা শিডিউলে দিয়েছিলাম যে ক্লাস আজকে আছে টেক্সট এডিটিং প্রিন্টিং, এই বিষয়ে আজকে আলোচনা করবেন চন্দ্রিমা এস ভট্টাচার্য ম্যামকে। আমাদের রামকৃষ্ণ বিদ্যা মন্দির কলেজের পক্ষ থেকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ এবং কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাই, কারণ তিনি অত্যন্ত ব্যস্ত মানুষ। তা সত্ত্বেও আমাদের অনুরোধে তিনি পরপর আহ, কতগুলো ক্লাস নিয়ে আমাদের সঙ্গে তার অভিজ্ঞতা শেয়ার করার জন্য তিনি রাজি হয়েছেন। এই জন্য আমরা অত্যন্ত কৃতজ্ঞ ম্যামের কাছে। এবং তোমরা যারা ক্লাস করছো তারাও সমৃদ্ধ হবে। অত্যন্ত গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয় নিয়ে তিনি আলোচনা করবেন। আজকে থেকে ক্লাসটা শুরু হবে, আগামীকালও ম্যামের ক্লাস রয়েছে। তাই তোমরা পুরো ক্লাসটা সবাই মন দিয়ে শুনবে, এবং কোনো প্রশ্ন যদি থাকে তাহলে ম্যামের কিন্তু আলোচনার একদম শেষে প্রশ্ন করবে, মাঝখানে কোনো প্রশ্ন করবে না। আর সবাই তোমাদের নিজেদের যে মাইক সেটা মিউট করে রাখবে এবং ভিডিওটাও কিন্তু অফ করে রাখবে। ঠিক আছে ম্যাম, আপনি শুরু করুন।
থ্যাংক ইউ, থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ। আমি ইংরেজিতেই বলবো তো, মানে ভাষাটা ইংরেজি?
হ্যাঁ ম্যাম ইংরেজিতে বলুন, ইংরেজিতে।
ঠিক আছে, ওকে। জাস্ট একটা কথা আমি একটু বলে রাখতে চাই, ইফ ইট ইজ ওকে তাহলে আই উড নট মাইন্ড ইন্টারাপশনস। মানে আমার কথা বলার মধ্যখানে যদি কারোর কোনো প্রশ্ন হয় আমার কিন্তু কোনো অসুবিধা নেই, আই উড ওয়েলকাম দ্যাট। আর এমনিতেও আদারওয়াইজ চ্যাটেও ইউ ক্যান সেন্ড কোয়েশ্চেন্স, মানে it can be an interaction rather than I speaking on continuously, but that I leave to you. So good evening again and welcome to the class. I hope we have a fruitful time discussing a few things about what my profession has been and its practices in a way, and also the larger perspectives about editing. So what is editing? You have attended a few classes already, I think 2 classes or so. I'm sure you have formed an idea of what editing is. Now, there is not one way of defining what editing is. As with most other things, there are many ways of looking at it. Especially now, because now the word editing has entered domains which were never thought of before. Primarily, I think for the younger generation who are internet friendly, for them the word edit means something to do with videos. It's also it's a word that is applied to other things, edited art shows, edited fashion is edited. Fashion edits are a very popular thing. A new edit is a phrase that comes up very often. And that is good, that is exciting. I am not one of those who will be a purist and say, no, editing is only about text and editing is only about writing, and text editing is very superior to, what everybody can do, make a video just with some basic skills. No, it shows that it really shows how important editing is as a function, which can be applied to many different fields of work, many different media. But where did it all begin? I think I don't really know if there is any comprehensive history of editing in the most fundamental sense of the word. Because, yes, do you want to ask a question? Is that it? Yeah. Yeah, please let me know, if you want to say something. What does raising a hand mean? What does raising a hand mean?
I think, ma'am, it means you that I have a question I want to ask you.
Yes, yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No, ma'am. I mean the raise a hand means that
Okay, but somebody did raise a hand, so I was wondering. Anyway, so
The
what I'm,
person who raised hand, he actually left.
oh, okay.
I think he missed us or something.
Okay, maybe he wanted to say that he wants to leave. Uh, anyway, so what was I saying? I was talking about uh, if there is a history. I do not know if there is a comprehensive history as such of editing in the most fundamental sense. I say fundamental because I think uh, that editing is as old as uh, not writing, but much older. Editing is as old as expression and uh, communication. So, I mean, we can really go back to a long time ago, to the first communications, first expressions, first human speech, let us say, in order to find the practices of editing. Because editing really means a selection or a rearrangement of something that already exists. So you see, any speech, any expression, this is, I'm saying again, it goes back to before writing, because we somehow think of editing as so connected with writing that we don't probably think of editing as predating writing. But any expression, any communication, when it transmits to another, something changes. It does not remain the same because the other person does something to it, however little, however small. That change we can call editing if it is done consciously. Sometimes changes happen despite our not knowing. Maybe there too, some part of it was deliberate without us knowing. But let us not get into all that. What I'm saying is a conscious, deliberate change made to some communication, some expression that we have received, that can be called editing in the most fundamental sense. If we look at, say, the world's oldest texts, we see very interesting things happen. We can find out a lot about a community or a culture in the way they treat texts that are very important to them, sacred to them. Hindu culture treats the Vedas, the earliest texts, as sacred and also calls them Shruti. You must be knowing that, right? Why is it called Shruti? Because the Vedas are called Shruti because they were heard and they were carried forward from person to person through recitation. They were learned by heart and they were handed down to generations in the form that they were received. So, what happens then is that you are told that you are not to alter a thing, you are not to edit, you are not to change its shape, you are not to add anything, you are not to take away anything. This happens with religious texts a lot because I think religious texts have a kind of authority, some religious texts especially, have a kind of authority that whichever the religious establishment is, people who will power, they want that authority intact. So you do not play around with certain things. They will be handed down just as they are. Now the Vedas, let us say, were not to be edited. You see, not much younger. We don't exactly know these days, at least I whatever I have been taught in history, that's what I feel, that we don't exactly know how to date these old texts. But another very old text in the Indian context is Ramayana. Now, Ramayana also has a lot to do with the Hindu religion. It's the epic from the most ancient, among the most ancient texts from India. It is widely popular. It has been so popular that it is now, even now, it is really a powerful thing in our national consciousness. It is used politically. Ram has remained one of the most iconic characters of our time, and he remains that till this day. But while the Vedas were kind of handed down like they were, remained intact, a very strange thing happened with Ramayana. You should read, I'll send a link. When you have time, you should read an essay called 300 Ramayanas by A.K. Ramanujan. You see, the story became so popular that there were an infinite number of Ramayanas. And sometimes one version looked completely different from another. Now, what was happening? It was not in the hands of individuals. Ramayana also would be sung, but it would travel from community to community in such a manner, loved so much, enjoyed so much, identified with so much that people thought that it belonged to them. Rama was somebody who belonged to their home, but not so in the case of Vedas. I mean, the Rig Vedas remained remote. The language was also, it was a different kind of Sanskrit. Ramayana got translated into many, many other Indian languages, not to mention foreign languages. So Ramayana was, if we can again use it in the most fundamental sense, Ramayana was being edited. Ramayana was being recreated. Ramayana was being reshaped, and Ramayana was being made a part of Indian life, or even beyond, through the ages. So what I'm saying is that editing is not just a matter of changing a few words, maintaining a few rules. No. Editing is actually shaping something, reshaping something. Yes. Now, there are different kinds of editing. Many, many different kinds of editing, especially now. I mean, there has been text editing, which I have been doing all my life. But film editing is also now pretty old. There is sound editing. There is video editing, which are called edits. Even memes are a kind of editing. There is online editing. There is content editing. There is product editing. I mean, now there is really no end to editing. But it obviously depends on what material you are editing. Obviously, and there is, I mean, within print, let us say, there is so much. There is publishing of books. You know, within publishing of books, there is fiction, there is poetry, there is non-fiction essays. There would be textbook editing, which is a very becoming much, much bigger now. There is academic materials editing, academic journal editing. There is editing, I should call it editing because, you know, preparing applications for students who are applying abroad. That has become also an important area of work. That is also editing. So within text editing, and then there is newspapers. This is just publication or books. Then there is newspapers, something I work in. News editing is very different from book editing, let us say. Again, within publishing, somebody who is editing, say, a book on history will be required to work in a completely different manner from somebody who is editing a book of fiction. So, in both cases, many things will be in common because there should be a structure, whatever it is, there should be a structure. We should know who the audience is, and the communication for that audience should be clear. But when you are, say, editing fiction, you are dealing with a work of imagination. in that case, you really have to keep in mind that the author's voice is very important. You have to be extremely sensitive to that because it is his work. It comes from inside him. It may be something that he has thought about, dreamed about, worked on his entire life. And it's a work of fiction. It is not something that will have exact correspondences with reality. So even his language, may be very faulty. It may be that he does not know grammar, but he has created something. And you have to be very sensitive, very protective of that which he has created. His voice, the story, the heart of the story. You may even, if you are brave enough, if you are confident enough, you may even suggest changing the structure of the story, but without somehow dismantling what the idea of the work is inside his head. With poetry too, you have to be very careful. Even changing one word will make a lot of difference. It may change the whole thing. It may do that in any case, in any piece you are working on. But with poetry, I think, again, you have to be very careful, very sensitive as to the language, as to the tone, and again, as to the heart of what he has created. That should be protected always. That should be intact. But say if you are working on, say, a textbook on management, then I think what you look at is the practical side of things. The communication must be very clear, the concept must be very clear, and well, imagination, of course, everything requires imagination, but this is probably not something the author has created on his own. He is passing down information, he is updating it, he is adding inputs. You have to be very alert to all that and make a very coherent text out of all that. I am not being hierarchical. I'm not saying that editing poetry is any higher than editing management books. Any work of editing requires a lot of skill, a lot of intelligence, application, I would say, and a lot of sensitivity. But it's just that it differs from material to material, medium to medium. That is just within publishing. If you're doing film, I know nothing of film, so I can't enlighten you. But I'm sure you will know. I mean, you see, good film directors, I'm not talking about video editing, I'm just talking about film, cinema. Good film directors always rely a lot on good editors. Sometimes they edit their film, they're editors of their films themselves. That is because good editing brings a kind of, what should I say, flow to the film, a finish, and a pace, which always makes for better watching. Satyajit Ray, for example, would rely on good editing to a great extent. His films are so watchable, also because of very good editing. He had a really great eye for editing. But on the other hand, Ritwik Ghatak, who many consider, as great a filmmaker, these are all debatable things, but many consider him as great. But Ritwik Ghatak did not care so much for these. He made his films passionately, and he shot them the way he wanted to. They are very powerful pieces, but they have rough edges. Some don't mind it, but some do, because really a good editing helps in the film being watched for many viewers. So that's how editing comes into film. Newspapers. I think I'll get into some depth about that, and I mean, as the classes progress, because my practices are all learned from the newspaper. But newspaper, just to touch upon these, a newspaper serves a very different function from a book or any kind of book, fiction, essays. Newspapers are made of small pieces, much smaller articles. In a newspaper, we have to be very careful about the point that is being made. I mean, a book of fiction can go on for pages without apparently having to make any point. The book actually does not even have to make a point. But a newspaper article has to have a point. Otherwise, why will the reader read it? What is he getting out of it? He's holding a newspaper in his hand or reading it online. And he has to read for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes and say, okay, yeah, so I did not know this. Now I know this, and this means this. So for a newspaper, editing has to be very concise, very precise, very sharp, to the point, very clearly visualized. It's a very good exercise, I should say, trying to edit for a newspaper to help you to structure your thoughts. It is a very good exercise. It's a very good discipline. You are given material which is unstructured, which are maybe just inputs, which may be something somebody has written, but so hastily that he hadn't been able to put any thought to it. From that, you have to see what you can make and shape it then. It is quite a challenging thing, and it requires a bit of training. Yes. Otherwise, now there is a lot of editing scope online, and I believe content can mean everything. Content would be news, content could be entertainment, content could be social media, content could be just products. And then again, your work would vary depending on the content. If you are a social media content creator, depending on what you are working on, you'll have your, brief, and you'll have your set of skills, and you will also have set of instructions. You are creating content for products, so your client will tell you apparently that you have to insert this particular word this many times, because if you do that, then it will show up easily on Google. Now, well, this is also editing. We cannot say that this is not editing, because you are restructuring, retailoring something to fit into a certain group. So this is also editing. And otherwise, there would be, I think, editing where you are dealing with material which is not far from what you would do, say, in the physical world with books or newspapers, only that it is now online. But the very fact that it is online creates a new dynamic, whatever you are working on. I mean, if you are editing, books for a publishing firm which will make books in physical format, and if you're working for books which will be available online, there will be some differences in practice. But that said, I should say that whatever differences there are in materials, in practices, the fundamentals do not change. The fundamentals are about what you are going to do to something that has been given to you to make it more presentable to the world. That is the fundamental of editing. That does not change. Whether you are working with text, you are working with film, you are working with social media, that is what you have to keep in mind. You have to know what you are going to do with this. This is basically something that is the foundation. Now, is that all? No, of course not. This is not all. There is a lot that you have to learn, you have to pick up as you go along a certain kind of, as you pick up a certain kind of editing. I work with the Telegraph newspaper. I've been working with the Telegraph newspaper for more than 20 years now, and I am a senior associate editor. I do what should I say, I do many kinds of work in the newspaper, including editing, and I write a lot too. When we joined, we would be taught many things, starting from where to use capitals, where to use a long dash, where to use a hyphen, where to use this font. Oh, and I haven't even talked about the format because actually there's no point. It's changing so much these days. But anyway, what to write in an introduction, many things. Every day we would be taught a few things. And these are all very important. And I mean, certain things get drilled into your head when you're young and they remain. So these are very important practices, which we will get into. But what is very important also is never to miss the wood for the trees. The wood is that you are here to give a piece of anything a new shape so that it becomes more presentable, it communicates better, and preferably it makes a point. Now, making a point, that is very important too. For that, you have to be very clear-sighted. You can only make a point when you are looking at things clearly. And for that, this is also something which is fundamental to editing. For that, you have to have a critical judgment. What does critical judgment mean? Now, both these words have negative connotations. Critical often is assumed to be something that is negative, and judgment we say so judgmental. No, a critical judgment does not mean either. A critical judgment means that when you are looking at something, you are looking at it from every point of view possible. You are trying to know the truth about this. For example, you are sitting at the news desk and you get copy, we say copy. You get copy, it says it's a report which has said that this and this person has been injured and this is the reason this happened. This is not enough. I'm giving you a very basic fundamental example. This is just not enough. You have to verify. You have to have somebody saying on authority that, no, this is what has happened. So, this is actually the reporter's job, but I'm saying that this is how it is structured. The reporter will have to say, will have to have some law and order person on authority, a policeman, or whoever, saying that this has happened. And if it is not there, then it is your job as an editor to point out to the reporter that your story is unfounded. That is the editor's job. I gave you a very basic, it's not as simple as that. But it is your job to point out. It is your job to find out, to see what is lacking in the story. Whether what is being said is substantiated or not. And this, other than when you are dealing with fiction, let us say, this holds. This holds across the spectrum. I mean, especially if you are dealing with, say, news, documentary, or a film that is, again, taken up some social issue or some piece of reality, you have to substantiate what you are saying. And for that, you have to have a critical eye. Especially now. Because now, with social media, especially, with so much reaching us all the time, it is very difficult to know what is going on. How do you know? You can't go to a fact checker all the time. No, it is not possible. And somewhere you have to take a leap into faith. You have to somehow accept that, no, not accept, I should say, somehow you have to have faith in a few things that, no, this is all right. But to arrive there, you really, really have to train yourself. You have to know which WhatsApp messages are not to be believed. As an editor, especially, it is your duty to try and find out what is fake and what is not. It is of absolute importance. And that is where criticality comes in. You have to be informed in such a way. You have to read. You have to open your eyes to everything that is going on around you. You have to know who are doing what for what end. Who will benefit if such and such a thing is said. That is criticality. It is not to say, oh no, this is rubbish. No, that is not criticality. It is to see whether this is rubbish. That is criticality. That is the most important tool an editor will have. Always. So this is, I believe, the basic idea of editing. Now, when you are actually sitting down to it, is this enough? No, it is not. It is not. It's a kind of grounding in the practice, and I believe it always helps. It always helps because, I mean, these positions you in a certain way vis-a-vis everything that you're going to deal with. But there are many skills to learn, and essentially, though I think a part of your classes will be about video, but a lot of it will be language skills. And what I plan to do is, through examples, small and big, I want you to introduce to the practices, actual practices that we adopt when we edit language, text. We will try, small bits and gradually go on to maybe bigger pieces. Also, I would like to share a lot of, if not a lot, at least some reading materials with you, which you can take a look at before you come to class, so that we can have an idea about, how certain things are done. Suppose, you are editing an interview, or you are editing profile of a person, or you're just editing a news report. I will stick to these things because I have never really edited a book of fiction. So how you will vary your skills, how you will move from, what you will do when you're dealing with different genres of writing. That also we'll look at. And we will look at general practices of writing also. Now, I do not really think editing is any different from writing as such. It may be that the original idea did not come from you. But sometimes editing can actually make a new work also. That happens. Editing and writing cannot really be separated. So we'll get into these things also a bit. So yeah, I think I have sort of given you an idea of what I think is the fundamental, actually the base of the practice of editing. Now, Maybe today we can take a look at the links that you have got. Have you got the links? Have you got the links of the in the email that I had sent Mr. Mondul?
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. All right. I'll just see if it reaches you. So, what I thought I would do is, I have sent to your university links to two versions of a particular piece. Now this piece is rather famous. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called Chief Seattle's Speech. Have you heard about it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. You have.
Yes, ma'am. We had it in our syllabus.
Sorry?
We had it in our syllabus in ISP.
Oh, are you from ICSC?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, yeah. Okay, so link has been sent to me. Have you got anything? Have you got the link? Yes? Yes?
No, ma'am, we haven't got.
You haven't? I think you will get it soon. It is a wonderful piece of writing, I feel, because of many things. It is a very beautiful piece of writing in itself. The language is beautiful. It is almost like poetry, evocative, very symbolic, full of really quite mesmerizing imagery. I mean, it is really a gift to be able to write like that. Also, it is being used, it's being read, often in the context of environment movements, because it is really a passionate cry for nature, earth, to remain as it is, to be not further destroyed. But that apart, its text history is very interesting. Now, the whole thing about the speech remains, kind of in the realm of conjecture. It is said that in 1854, Chief Seattle was a Native American chief. He met the newly born American, state representative, somebody from Washington, to talk about the rights of the Native Americans, because obviously the land was being taken from them, forced away from them. And But there is no actual evidence of the event happening. And then there is no written record of the speech as well. And then this event was supposed to have happened in 1854 or around that time, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously in what we now know as Seattle. But, but the first time that it appears as a written document is in 1887. So the first link that I have sent you is the speech that appeared written in 1887. But there's really no proof that Chief Seattle actually spoke those words. And that was the first version that appeared. It kind of became almost like a mythical piece of writing, and it would be spoken about, it would be remembered, quoted from, and it would be written again and again. So I think in a few years there was another version, and there was another version, and there was another version. So there were at least 4 or 5 versions going around, which kept happening from time to time. None of it more authentic or less authentic than the other, because nobody knew what the original was. And finally, one of the most recent versions that was used, I believe, at an environment forum to talk about environment concerns. So I consider this as a marvelous instance of editing. How something changes from time to time in various hands and serves various purposes. And I thought that you would like to read 2 versions at least. I have chosen the first version, or what goes by as the first version. And I like this elusiveness about the speech, this mystery also. I think it really adds to the attraction of a piece of writing when it is, so beautiful in itself. So it deepens it in some way. So I thought that you would like to read the earliest version that is written, available, and one of the most recent versions, which is kind of shown of all the archaic uses and everything. And to see, if you were probably given that piece today, you would be asked to edit it in contemporary language. And that is how it has happened. Yet, the ideas remain the same and as powerful and as relevant. Why does the speech survive? Because it speaks of things that mean that much to us today in a completely different context. We are all in parts of West Bengal, I guess. I don't know where you are, all of you. I am in Calcutta. This is 2022. And that was 1854, America, Native American chief in encounter with a white racist chief administrator. The context could not be any more different, but it survives. So this, I think, is good editing also. So if we have it now, we can go through it. Do we have it? Have you got the pieces?
No, ma'am.
Not yet? Oh. Okay, then let me just take a 5-minute break, or yeah, I'll let me talk to Mr. Mondal and then come back. Okay? Yeah. Have you got it? Have you got the text?
No, ma'am, not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Yes, I think you will get it very shortly. So once you get it, please let me know. I wish if I could send you stuff directly, it would have been easier. And
Yes, ma'am,
tomorrow,
we got it.
got it? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So take say about 10 minutes to go through both pieces. Okay, and then we can just come back and we can discuss the two pieces side by side. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, 10 minutes. And Yeah, so can we start again? Can we start? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So, what do you think? I think I would like to know some of your views about how the two pieces are different or same. No? Okay. See, if you just read the first few paragraphs, what is most striking is the difference in the use of language, the elaborateness in one, and the plainness of other. That is a sign of the times. So the older begins, yonder sky that has wept tears of compassion on our fathers for centuries untold, and which to us looks eternal, may change. Today it is fair, tomorrow it may be overcast with clouds. My words are like stars that never set. What Seattle says the great Chief Washington can rely upon with as much certainty as our pale faced brothers can rely upon the return of the seasons. And here, see, that was an 1887 piece. And here, this was written in 1971. This particular use is used in a film on ecology in 1971. Here it starts straight away saying, how can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? So it is completely different in language and tone. It is direct, the new one, and shorn of flourishes. And the other one is very, very, detailed in its imagery, in its, uh, preoccupation with many aspects of nature. And then the older piece goes on with some very beautiful again imagery from nature to talk about their state. It says, there was a time when our people covered the whole land as the waves of a wind-troubled sea cover its shell-paved floor. But that time has long since passed away with the greatness of tribes, now almost forgotten. I will not mourn over our untimely decay, nor reproach my pale-faced brothers for hastening it, for we too may have been somewhat to blame. It's a very beautiful imagery. It is haunting almost, and it is so full of pathos and sadness of something that has gone. Now, in this piece, there is not even a mention of that. You know, did you find it? It was not there.
Yes, I
Again,
will.
hello? 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 Yeah. So again, it's a very, very different approach. And it goes on. Uh, But at the end, the point that is made here is the same as the one, that has been made in the earlier speech. They sound very different. They are put very differently. Even the voice appears very different. But they say the same things. Only what I feel is missing, from the first, when we read it and when we come to the last one, is that the first one really evokes an entirely different world of, almost a different civilization, of a way of life in which the people are as much a part of nature as nature is a part of them. And here they are talking about nature and the environment, but since they are making it contemporary, that part is done away with. They want to communicate with an audience which is more than 100 years younger, has come later. And that audience will not obviously be informed of the particular context of Chief Seattle. Therefore, it has to be presented differently. The context has to be different. And it says the same thing. It is really about the right of a people to their land. Yet, since it says it so differently, it says the same thing, but it has also become different. I particularly feel that the recent version has, since it has done away with all those dimensions, has lost something. Now, it has survived. The speech has survived because in itself it is so powerful. But I think a good editor should keep in mind that not much is lost of the original also. If it was to be edited for the contemporary times, you had to think of a way of writing it, of writing it in such a way that it remained relevant in its language, yet it did not lose its depth. At the same time, I think it is a very good example of a kind of editing that has happened through time. And if you do have time, go back to the other versions also. The ones that are older are not very different at first from the oldest one, but you will see small changes coming in. It is very interesting to see these changes coming in. And this is kind of, nobody had taken it up as a project. It has just happened. This is what fundamentally editing is. It is, making something ready for the times so that it communicates best. Now, some editing will be good, some editing will be bad. Some editing will work, some editing will not. We have to see that what we are asked to do works. That is why we'll have to keep certain things in mind, which is, as I said before, a set of tools. They are as much about grammar as about structure and about ethics. What you can say, what you cannot say, that also is very important. A piece must not offend the vulnerable, Also, there should be an assumption of neutrality and equality. If we are in, so if we have to be very conscious, we have to be very aware of the fact that our peace does not unnecessarily hurt anybody. There is no assumption of superiority on our part. That is the ethical part. Also, there are a few other practices. There are some legal things we have to keep in mind. We cannot just go ahead and say some things, because in that case, that person may sue us, against whom we are saying something in an unsubstantiated manner. So it is as much about language, about syntax, about structure of the body, as about these things. But at the same time, editing also has to be aware of censorship. Censorship itself can be called a form of editing, but we have to be aware that we are not censoring things out unnecessarily. You must be aware of, I think many of you are studying literature, you must be aware of Baudelaireization. Shakespeare was Baudelarized. He was thought not, good enough, moral enough for consumption, I think in the 18th century. So I think it was Sir Thomas Baudelaire who had edited parts of Shakespeare out, and he published an expurgated version of Shakespeare. So that's censorship. But we are also censoring things out all the time, unconsciously too. We are assuming that this is not to be said, or maybe we are also assuming too much. Why do we always assume a nurse is female? If we see a nurse who is male, we call him a male nurse. But when we see a female nurse, do we call her a female nurse? No. Assumption of certain gender stereotypes, assumption of certain class stereotypes, assumption of certain religious stereotypes, assumption of certain race stereotypes, community stereotypes. These are all ingrained in our minds. When we are editing, we have to be aware of these things too. We have to be as fair as possible when we are editing. It should not be offending a community in any case. And all these things can be learned. These are practices and skills that can be learned through time and through further practice. Honestly, when I joined, then we were told a few things all the time. But what has happened is, through the years, through the practice, these things have also become far more sharpened and relevant for us, for me, and for my colleagues. So practice is something that has its own value. At the same time, you can get acquainted with this, and these things can be kept in mind in any case. For the things that editing really teaches you is that you are shaping something that has been given to you. You are giving it a structure. You are putting it in language that is clear. You are trying to be as objective as possible. You are looking at things with a critical eye. You are trying to see that you are not offending anybody. You are not being judgmental. You are not assuming things. These are values that can also be practiced in life. I mean, ideally, a good editor should be a good person also. Now, these are many. If we have only two classes, it is not possible to sort of go through all of them. So what we will do is, in the next class, which is tomorrow, I will first try to talk about language, certain rules that we have to keep in mind when it comes to editing, and give you small examples of what is usually say common mistakes, and what should be actually written. For that, I would like to ideally screen share. For that, I think I'll take Mr. Mandal's help. In case that does not work, what I'll do is I will send you a selection of texts, and that we can discuss the way we are doing it now. You'll have some small passages or sentences in front of you, and they will sort of be about the things that we just talked about, the mistakes that we make, the assumptions that is one very, very big thing, the assumptions that we bring to language, that we have to be very clear of. Also, a certain kind of neatness of structure, not using unnecessary words, not repeating stuff, not using words which really don't mean anything but occupy space. Also, we have to keep in mind that English and Bengali are very different as languages. Even, editing is a cultural thing in many ways. What editing means in English is not really what editing means in Bengali. In Bengali, the language is far more relaxed. And if you read Bengali literature, if you read Bengali fiction, not newspapers so much, but fiction or other kinds of writing, you will find that the language itself lends to a certain kind of, what should I say, it has its own volume, let us say. But English is very different. English is paired. English is kind of, polished. English does not have space for a single extra word. So if we are editing in English, we have to keep those rules in mind. But does that mean Bengali does not need to be edited? Of course it does. Of course. I mean, every bit of writing needs to be edited. Every piece can be edited. But for that, maybe we'll have to keep a certain different set of rules in mind. So that we'll try to do tomorrow. And in the following class, we may actually look at a longer passage, which we will try to edit. If we have time, we will maybe look at 2 longer passages and try to edit them online. Is that okay? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now tell me if you have any questions. Please feel free to ask anything. You can ask me about my profession. You can ask me about my experience, anything.
Ma'am, one question.
Yes, please.
No, as you were talking about censorship, so
Yes.
in your profession, what kind of elements play into it? Like, what should be censored, what should be not?
Yeah. Well, see, censorship in itself is a sort of negative word. I wouldn't like to say that we practice censorship. No. But there are certain things maybe we don't do. At one point of time, it was a rule that newspapers will not publish pictures of the dead. Dead bodies will not be featured. Okay? Because the idea was that, I mean, what good will it do? It will only shock the reader. The death has happened, it has been described, the report will say that. So, what good will just the picture of the dead do? It will be sensationalism. It will probably sell the paper a little more on that day, but on the whole, it will be exploiting the dead. It will not be right. But you see how things have changed. Now the dead appear quite regularly in newspapers, right? Also, in social media, there is no bar. Also, during the pandemic, when the dead couldn't be burned, so many were floated in the river, and then there were not enough cremation grounds, so the dead were being burnt on the banks of the river. That fire, these became the image for a while for the pandemic. So that has changed in a certain way, but that was one rule. Then there is another thing that is practiced even now in media. In a way, it is quite pointless because everybody knows what it is. But if there is communal violence, communities are not named. It is not done because it is thought that by naming communities, the violence will only flare up. This is all very debatable. There is no one word on this, but this rule is practiced. Or if something very sensitive happens, which can endanger national security or peace, even say not at the national level, even locally, sometimes things are not reported. Again, this is debatable. So, which comes first? Truth or security, safety? But these things are followed, yes. Censorship, if you call this censorship, well, this is censorship, but these are practiced more or less. Otherwise, censorship, no. Anything else? Yes.
Just a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
When we were reading that Chief Seattle's speech,
Yes.
I felt that the latter version,
Yes.
it was somehow like edited to fit into the context where it was to be presented. Like it was, as
Sorry,
you said,
sorry. What did you say? The latter version?
felt like it was edited to fit into the context, like the
Yes.
environment presentation
Yes.
it was presented.
Yes.
So how prevalent is that writing is edited as you want it to, present it as the editor sees fit?
Sorry, can I have your question once more? I didn't get it. How prevalent is?
How prevalent is the practice that the editor edits a text as he sees fit, he or her sees fit?
Well, it depends. I mean, see, obviously we would not be printing Chief Seattle's speech now in a newspaper. Not like this, not as news or not as not as, only if it was something very special would we print something like that. But uh, if if you know something, and not something so well known maybe, or something so important, but say an older piece of writing had to be presented in some way now, then I think we would have to make the language contemporary. We'd have to say that we are here uh, presenting it in contemporary language, and we would present that. That is for a piece in, say, an archaic language. Otherwise, every piece can be edited. Every piece is in a certain way. Now there is no rule again. It depends on what the piece is. Some pieces need to be rewritten completely, which is why I'm saying that editing can be writing. They have to be written from the scratch because there is a germ of something in it, yet as a written piece, it does not hold together. Maybe there are too many people who have filed inputs and you have to make something out of it. Or maybe the person who has written has just had time to give you inputs. Or maybe that there's a bit of reporting from a certain person and there are agency reports. So you have to compile them. Or maybe that the person who has written it has something very important to say, but he just does not know how to write. It may be that also. In that case, a very good editor will sit down, talk to that person, get the germ of the truth of that story, and write the whole thing. So, in that case, you really don't know who the writer is. The editor becomes a writer also. So, that is why the editor has to see, has to know that what it is about. Everything can be edited, and everything probably improves when edited by the right person. Also, one of the one of the wisdoms of our trade is that everything improves when it becomes 2/3 of its length, because there is always a lot of unnecessary stuff. Now, if we look at Tagore's songs, that will not hold. But generally, for more mundane pieces, practical everyday pieces, or sometimes very good pieces also, in prose maybe, if you cut them down, they improve because they become sharper, more pointed, the message comes across better. And a writer, is kind of possessive about his or her words because the writer feels that it has come out of him or her. It is her baby. But an editor will have a more objective view of the piece, which hurts the writer sometimes. But maybe, if the editor can be trusted, it is good if the editor does it. It improves. Editing is for making something better. So an editor's job is a very responsible job. You are being entrusted with something that has been created by another person.
Okay, ma'am.
Everything can be edited. Everything can be edited. And we ourselves, our thinking processes are also kind of editing in a way, because we are selecting stuff to think of, to engage with, to work on. If we don't do that, then we can't go about our lives. So that it is a very deliberate, conscious selection of things with a point of view, with something in mind. If we come back to this metaphor of woods and trees, this is the wood and the trees are the tools. But you have to make your own way. You use these tools to make your own way. You have to find the path. Only then you can go on seeing the woods. Otherwise, you see only the trees. But does that mean the trees are not important? Yes, the trees make the wood also. There would be no wood without the trees. But you have to find your own way. And editor's choice is a very deliberate choice. He has to know what he's doing. He's shaping things. That is the most important thing. He or she has to know what she is doing, what is being done. This business of pronouns also, I am using he or she, and then I'm using she only. This is also something we should discuss. This is an editor's job to be very conscious of. You know, what pronouns to use, in what context. It can change a whole piece of writing, just the use of a pronoun. These particular things we will be discussing as much as possible in this class from tomorrow. You have to really rethink everything. And then you also realize that if you are a good editor, you can be a good writer also. And it's vice versa. Sometimes writers are very good editors too. Not necessarily. But what I'm saying is that the processes are not very different. They are processes which are almost simultaneous. Even writing is a kind of editing, because a writer is, when a writer decides to write something, he makes a selection inside his head. And he says that these are the things I'll write of, and these are the things I won't about a character. I mean, he is not representing the character in his or her entirety. Selecting what bits are important for the story, for the narrative. This is also an editing process. So what I'm saying essentially is editing is a process. Editing is a process. When you are doing editing officially, professionally, then you are actually working on something that another person has created. That is the difference. And for that, there are some rules. But you should know that what you think, what you're about to do with that piece is very important. It will not undermine that piece. At the same time, it will improve it. Otherwise, there's no point editing. And that's where you come in. That is very important. Any more questions?
No.
Any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. Just one question, ma'am.
Tell me.
Ma'am, just we have said that religious texts like Rig Veda were not edited list. So, ma'am, but they still are being edited by to some extent. That
I
how,
can't hear you clearly. Tell me.
ma'am, as you said that some the religious texts like Rig Veda were edited less.
No, see, not I did not exactly say that. What I'm saying is, it was meant to be repeated. I don't think there was any anything was ever said like that you are not to edit it. No, but the very idea that it would be handed down in its intact form from generation to generation meant that it would not be altered. That's what I'm saying. No text will say that please edit me. No, nobody will do that. But you know what to do, how to approach something, right? So what I was saying was that Veda was handed down like that, but not Ramayana, because of the nature of the text, the different natures of the text. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me. I don't think that no anybody ever said that it is not to be edited. No, it's not that. But the idea was that it would be handed down in its original pure form. Have I answered your question?
Yes, yes, ma'am. I was confused that time. That's why. Okay.
No. I mean, I'm just saying that, the idea of Rig Vedas was that. As with many other, I think, texts, religious texts, I wouldn't know of all the religious texts and exactly how they have been transmitted. But I think more or less, in many cases, you are required to keep it going the way it is. It is because of the authority invested in religious texts and the need for the community to have them in a particular form all the time. But other contemporary texts will behave very differently. That's what I'm saying. It depends on what the text is, how it travels. Editing is a natural thing. It is really a natural thing. But the idea is to make things friendlier, more readable, more watchable, more people friendly. That's what editing is. To give it a certain direction, a point, enhanced in some way. Okay, so we end here today, and tomorrow we'll meet at the same time.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.